All right, Professor, we should be live right now. Professor, we should be live. I got the great Professor James Smalls with me today, family. Welcome to the platform, Professor.
Thank you, Brother Rich. It's good to be back.
Indeed. I never had you on a live stream. I had you in the basement, but I never had you on a live stream. So it's different, and I'm glad to have you. Actually just came from shooting The Godfather of Harlem, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're on episode 9. We should finish that up in a week or so, and we'll be on the last episode 10.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be debuting on the Epic channel starting on the 18th of April. And it'll be 10 episodes, throughout the spring.
Right. That's actually a good show. They mess up a lot of shows on TV when they start talking about the history of certain black people, but that's actually a very good show, man. So I'm glad that they have you on board. What are you serving as on that show?
I'm the consultant, the historical consultant for the piece. And I go beyond the history. I deal with the wardrobe. I deal with the decoration of the rooms. I deal with what should be on the table. Even get an opportunity to work with the writers and help them put words in people's mouths. So,
right. Okay, that sounds good. All right, the people coming into the room right now, y'all see, I got Professor James Small with me. We're gonna have a good conversation tonight. Shout out to Richard Lee from the London, UK. Somebody said it's small. Is Professor Smalls or small?
Small, S-M-A-L-L.
I put an S. Okay, thank you for somebody in the chat for telling me that. Thank you. I don't know why I put an S. I don't know why.
Well, you have it right. You have S-M-A-L-L.
No, I put an S. I put an S at the end. Maybe I'm thinking Biggie Smalls or something.
Yeah.
But listen, let me get to a few. Thanks for letting me know that in the chat, family. Let me get to a few ads, family, and then we're going to get started with a magnificent conversation. We're only going to be on here for about an hour, but it's going to be a good talk tonight, family. So let me just share a few ads with y'all before we get started, all right? First and foremost, got to always give a shout out to my brother King Simon, one of the best when it comes to numerology. Make sure you text him your name and your date of birth, 347-496-1022. The brother will surely help you. Glucose support formula is now ready for the family. If diabetes is the enemy, you got to hit up this website right here, riversideTaichi.com/glucose support formula. They have a sale right now for 3 bottles. Also, Billy Carson got another bestseller, man. He got another bestseller on Amazon. Woke doesn't mean broke. Make sure you support that brother and get your finances right. Just because you're conscious don't mean you got to be broke. And of course, the hat I always wear is sponsored by my brother right here, Copper Child Mike L. Get your crown, family. Call that number on the screen. The brother will hook you up, make you have you looking right out here with the crowns, family. All right. With that being said, we back with Professor James Small, and it was a rainy day in New York today, huh, Professor?
Yeah, it was like, and I had to drive home from Brooklyn in that rain, But it's all good. It's all good.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit about spirituality. There's, that's probably one of the religion is probably one of the most divisive tools. Not that it's bad, but it can be used as a form of division, where I worship this God and I despise you, I hate you, I know nothing about you, but I just know that you worship another God. So we in the conscious community, what we call the conscious community, we have been trying to get to the root of all of this for a long time. We got brothers like Aswa Kwesi, Walter Williams, Dr. Phil Valentine, the list goes on and on, yourself and many others who have tried to tie all the religions together and show everybody how they're actually related to each other. So with that being said, let's start out with this. One of the most powerful images in humanity in the last thousands of years is Jesus, my brother. Jesus, that whoever that dude was, that motherfucker is popping. You know what I'm saying? That entity, Jesus Christ or Jesus or whatever, man, that's a popular dude right there. You got Michael Jackson. after Michael Jackson is Jesus. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Michael Jackson is close to Jesus, but Jesus got him by, you know, he got him. Talk to me about who is, from your study, the African voodoo and the ancient mystery systems, who exactly is Jesus, Professor James Small?
Well, Jesus is not a who. That's the first problem.
Okay.
First thing, let's look at the definition of religion. What does the word mean? You know, it comes from the Greek word re, to do over or go back, and ligio, to bind. So the word religion means bind back to something.
Mm.
And what you're trying to bind back to is a body of information that is supposed to help you build your character to an optimal level so that you be more godlike. That's what it. And what these books like Bibles and Quran and Torah, they show you examples of people supposedly in history who paid devotion to this thing called God, quote unquote, and the rewards for playing devotion and the consequences for not. You see. And they have the ethical and moral teachings on how to behave and how to do the good thing and the right thing. And they got stories that are examples of this. That's basically what the books are about. And some of it is, you know, repetitive and that sort of thing. But just remember the term religion means to bind back. What should a people bind back to? And you should bind back to the history and culture of your ancestors. So if you're binding back to the history and the culture of somebody else's ancestors, shit, anything may happen to you. Okay? So the institution we know as Christianity is 21 years old. That's not a long time, you know. Kemet, that kingdom in Northeast Africa along the Nile, lasted for more than 35,000 years and didn't know anything about Jesus. There are kingdoms in South Africa that was over 100,000 years, didn't know anything about Jesus. Jesus is the European interpretation of the model God-like person, you know? And the life story that they've given to him is to demonstrate how one should behave and what sacrifice you should make and what consequence should come from your life if you are devoted to what is called God. And, you know, when you use a human being or an animal to symbolize ideas, concepts, and principles, and Jesus is a set of ideas, concepts, and principles, not a person. But in the ancient days, they didn't have cameras, they didn't have videos, and most people, 99% of people didn't read or write. So the way you taught them was through either drawings, paintings, or sculpting, and storytelling, you know, oral tradition. And so Jesus became the symbol by which people learn how to be human and godly. After most of the then world that the Europeans know, because Jesus is a European phenomenon as we know it, even though it comes out of an African school of thought. And so it's when the European gets it, they're an ignorant society, they're an illiterate society. So they have to find a way of teaching people the concepts and ideas and principles that they few learned people are learning from Africa. And they created a fantastic tool, Jesus. And the document around him, which is called the Bible, which is started in 325 AD, the writing of it, it takes them about 700 years to finish it. But that document with that central character And the document also includes what we call the Torah, or the Old Testament. But the central character in Christianity is Jesus. And he represents a set of concepts, ideas, and principles on how the God man or the God woman should behave. And what is the consequence and the rewards of behaving that way or not behaving that way. And this was told in a set of stories that's written about his life supposedly by the disciples, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But no one have any historical proof that any of those people wrote any of that stuff. Because when the Bible is being written, it's 325 years after the events of his life. So who the hell is around 325 years later to tell the story? So what is the story then? The story is not about an individual at all. It's an old African story about cosmology and ecology being told using anthropomorphism, using a human being to represent, and human beings to represent those things. So the church as we know it, the Catholic Church, was founded, that's the mother church of most of Christianity. But there's a church before the Catholic Church by 500 years, which is called the Byzantine Church or the Eastern Orthodox Church. This exists before the Catholic Church. And when it exists, it doesn't have a Bible yet. They're trying to write it, right? Mm-hmm. The church we call the Ethiopian Church doesn't come up out of Africa directly. The Ethiopian Church comes out of two other organizations, the Coptic Church of Egypt and the Byzantine Church of Asia Minor, or what we call the Northern Middle East. And that Ethiopian church is itself 500 years older than the Catholic Church. And the Protestant churches, you know, the Lutheran, the Baptist, the Methodist, these churches are 1,000 years younger than the Ethiopian church. Now, though Ethiopia borrowed this ideology, because that's what it is, it's a cultural ideology, it borrows a lot of it from the Coptic church in Egypt and the Byzantine church in what is now Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, that area. It imbues its own African thing into it, because the Byzantine church and the Coptic church comes out of Africa to start with, but we didn't call them churches, okay? And I wanted to get that out there without making it too complex, because it's important that people study the timeline. And you can look these timelines up on the computer. You can Google them, shit. You don't have to do no deep research to see what I just said. But it's important to know the timeline, because then you'll understand the power of the Jesus Christ. Because Jesus Christ is only powerful in the world because somebody brought it on the barrel of the gun. And they murdered nearly 1 billion people over the last 2,000 years to implement Jesus as the primary God character. It isn't that people loved it and converted to it. People were forced to do this. But this is all they got now, most people, because they don't have access to the information of what they had before they were forced into this thing. And obviously, it's beautiful and it sounds good, but as messed up as the world is, it tells you it doesn't work. You know?
Now, Professor, what would you say, though? I know individuals who are making great achievements in their life, and whether it's business-wise, whether it's family-wise, whether it could be something miraculous happens with their health, and they give all praises due to Jesus. They pray to Jesus, and they. Okay, so let me finish, Professor. So they have a problem in their life. What they know is that they pray to this entity called Jesus, and they get results. So how do you, there's got to be something real about Jesus for these individuals to be getting results. Or maybe we have a misunderstanding about, our own power, but what exactly goes on where they get results to
there's
entity
nothing
that doesn't
real
even
about
exist?
Jesus. So we don't play with our own heads. The Shinto man in Japanese prays to Shintoism and he gets the same results.
Right.
The Buddhist man in India prays to Buddhism and he gets the same result.
Mm-hmm.
The voodoo man in Haiti prays to voodoo and he gets the same result.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no Jesus involved in any of them. So it's not about the image. You can use any image you want. All right. You can call it what you want. You can use any image you want. This is about the human mind and its relationship to its environment.
Mm.
And even the story of Jesus is about that.
Mm-hmm.
But since the white man colonized the information about human relationship to the divine, and he colonized it and called it Christianity. Mm-hmm. And then he gives it a central figure called Jesus. And then he makes that figure a white man, the image of the greatest murderer in the history of the world, the image of the greatest rapist in the history of the world, the image of the greatest robber in the history of the world. And when you worship Jesus, you can say, I'm not worshiping the white man, but if you got the image of the greatest rapist, the greatest robber, the greatest murderer, so if you're getting some good things happening to you, the drug dealer, I know drug dealers that never went to the penitentiary and didn't die from an OD and got wealthy and built all kinds of businesses. They weren't praying to Jesus. Mm-hmm. Okay. I know people who got away with murder. Mm-hmm. They didn't, that ain't a Jesus. So that's not, see, what the problem is the thing called religion to bind back. Mm-hmm. What are you binding back to? Mm-hmm. Are you binding back to the body of information, or are you binding back to the culture of the murderer, robber, rapist, imprisoner, and enslaver? Mm-hmm. And if you look at our behavior and how many of our own people we killed in the last 30 years, African Americans have murdered more than 300,000 other African Americans. And all of those, 99% of those murderers were Christians, Black Christians. Mm-hmm. So we need to look at the real picture and look in the real mirror and ask the real question. But let me come back to the religion and not get too far off of it. When Christianity was founded as we know it, and that as we know it is the phenomena that comes out of the Roman Catholic Church. And in the 1500s, Martin Luther break away from that and created the Protestant churches. And most of our people are part of those Protestant churches, especially as it manifested in England, the Methodist Church, the Baptist Church, and then the ones that followed in America, the Holiness Church and the Seventh-day Adventists and all of this was broke away from the Methodist and the Baptist churches. But all of them used the same Bible, and all of them talked about the same Jesus. Any form of worship will bring results if it allows you, if the document you're studying allows you to build good character. It has nothing to do with a particular name or anything. If you look at the Last Supper, you've seen a painting of the Last Supper, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you this, Rich, and then I'll come back. What is it that you see in that picture? Describe it to me.
It's like a camaraderie. It's like they're sitting down eating. It's like, when you eat with your family, that's love right there. When you sit and eat with your list, you only eat with people you love most of the time, majority of the time.
But he's going to die shortly after that dinner because somebody at the dinner supposedly turned his butt in, right?
Yeah.
Almost for camaraderie. But at any rate, when I look at the picture, here's what I see. I see a guy sitting in the middle of the table, right? And he's got 6 people on one side and 6 on the other side, right? And the guy's got a light around his head. They call it a halo, like light is emanating from his brain. And what I see is the white man capturing of the Kemetian people's concept of Ra. Instead of it being the sun in the sky, it is now in the brain of the human that's emanating the light. But he's symbolic of the sun. And around him, there's 12 people representing the 12 months of the year, rotating around that sun. And if you look at the picture, you will see on either side, there's 2 groups of 3s talking only to one another. So that's the 4 seasons. revolving around the sun.
Okay.
And we could go deeper, but how many people even see that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you look at that photograph again, you will see the sun represented by the head of this man they call Jesus, giving off the light that they call a halo, which is the light of the world that give life to the world. And then you got 12 objects in human form, but they're the 12 months of the year. And then you've got the 12 objects groups in 4 group of 3s, which represent the 4 seasons of the year, evolving around the sun. So it's an anthropomorphic representation of a solar drama, relationship to the earth. And so when we begin to understand, if you go and study ancient Egypt, we already have a crucified savior in the form of a Sar, who they call Osiris in the West. We already have a virgin mother in the form of Aset. We already have the Immaculate Conception of the child in the form of Peru. Tens of thousands of years before we make contact with the Romans, who would then take this information and transform it into Christianity. But what they did was not necessarily wrong. They took fragments from the periphery of the African sacred science spiritual system and created for themselves within their culture, with that body of information, a sacred survival system, which we now call religion. You with me on that?
Yes.
So we're flowing, right?
Yeah.
And so once you understand that, somebody conquers you. They're barbarians, they're murderers, they're thieves, they're rapists. But now that they've conquered this rich land called Northeast Africa, they want some peace in their life. They want to enjoy what they've stolen.
What they stolen, right, okay.
But they don't have a system to organize the community. So they take your system, okay, which they don't fully understand. So they took the aspect of it that they could grasp, and using many of your priests and others to help them do it, and they create what we call Christianity. In 2009, the Pope was in Cameroon, West Africa, and he told the people there, he said, out of the 10 authors of the Christian doctrine, 7 were Africans.
Okay.
We know that who study Kemet, but to hear the Pope say it in public,
right.
And it was published in Time magazine in 2009. I forgot the month, but it's easy to find when he visited Cameroon and to listen to that speech.
Yeah.
He's talking about the people who take the African spiritual literature and creates the Bible as a tool to help organize the Roman society, primarily the Roman elite, because the masses couldn't read or write. So a Bible was of no use to them. But that's where pictures and paintings come in. That's why there's so much painting and sculpture. They take the ideas that they got from Africa and they put in the document they call the Bible. They take these ideas and had painters paint these ideas on the Sistine chapels and sculpt these ideas so that the ignorant masses can look at the symbolic representation of these ideas and be schooled by them into the doctrine. But they didn't have a whole system. They didn't have the capacity to understand a whole system. So what they did was took fragments from the periphery, and those fragments had earlier created what is called Hebrew Israelite doctrine, the Torah. And now another group invade us and take fragments and created Christianity. And another group will come and take those two collection of fragments and add to it and create the Quran. If you read the Quran, all of the Old Testament is in there, all of the New Testament, and then the revelations of Prophet Muhammad. They're all the same body of information they stole out of Northeast Africa. But they didn't steal it to harm nobody, I don't think, initially. They were trying to organize themselves into a more humane society. But obviously, it didn't work to transform them because they continued their barbarity and their murder and their rape and their plunder of the entire world. And they took their doctrine, their creation now, that they're now calling Christianity and Islam, and by the gun and the sword, they forced this on the people they conquer with those gun and the sword. And they conquer those people for the purpose not to save their soul, but to steal their gold and their diamond and their oil and their olive and their wheat and their barley, etc.
Mm-hmm.
This is the story, if you're going to tell the truth. Now, what is the story really about the Africans were telling? What was the blueprint the African created for himself to make himself the human being that he would be and live and be postured according to our principle of Ma'at, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, reciprocity, and balance? What is that body of information? That body of information is a study of cosmology. That means the things we see up in the sky, and the study of the earth, ecology, the things in the environment we live in. And the study was, how do these things work? And how do they relate to us? What food to eat to be healthy? What herb to take to heal yourself? You know, when should you wake up in the morning? When should you plant your crop? When should you harvest your crop? When do you know it's time to mate your sheep and your cattle and so forth to produce? All of these things is learned from the movements of the stars and the moon and the sun in the cosmos, and from the revelation that comes from the knowledge of plant, animal, and animated and inanimate life on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's what we call voodoo. Okay. Voodoo is simply the study of the cosmology and the study of nature and interpreting it in a way that you can create a social ecology based on those principles that would produce a society that is communal, collective, cooperative, and based on harmony and balance. But when that gets disrupted, once you build your society by warmongering people that came from Europe and Asia, then you have to run away and you have to move to other places and try to reconstruct yourself. That school that allow you to reconstruct yourself is what we call culture. And what is culture? To cultivate the best of the wisdom of your ancestors in order to give you a guide for how to live life. But it's really not complex, because spirituality is not a religion. Spirituality is your reality. Are you functioning? Are you conscious of your reality? And are you functioning optimally in that reality based on the laws of nature and the laws of the universe that our ancestors spent tens of thousands of years studying and leaving for you in the form of allegory, metaphor, habits, and behaviors in a vehicle called culture for you to carry on intergenerational transmission of that wisdom for the survival of your group. But when somebody disrupt your ability to learn that knowledge, they've disrupt your ability to translate that to the next generation. And now they put you in a posture where you can be enslaved to the information that they've been able to understand and they've been able to organize, which we call today the three major Western religions. I hope that isn't an oversimplification, but in a nutshell, that's really what we're talking about. Because I say to people, I'm God having a human experience. I've been saying this before anybody else out here had the courage to say this. I've been saying this for 40-something years. And when I know people were afraid of it, so I broke it down and said that you and I, we are an expression of an aspect of the divine essence having the human experience. And if you don't believe that is true, and God is the creator, show me anything that God created that didn't come through the womb of a woman in the human form. You know, there's the animal kingdom, there's the bird kingdom, there's the the fish kingdom and so forth. But we'll just talk about the human kingdom. The only way God can create humans is in the womb of the woman as a result of contact with the penis and the sperm of a man. So then, if that's true, and that is true, then the man and the woman is that when they get involved in sex and produce a life, they are that aspect of God that creates, and that's the only way God can create humans. But you're not separate from your God, according to African. You're part of the God itself.
Professor Moss, but saying that, would you say woman, in particular, Black woman, is the closest representation of God then?
No, that's when we're being playing their game again.
Okay.
That Black woman can have the most beautiful vagina in the world and the prettiest womb in the world, but without my penis and my sperm, she got a problem. Ain't no reproduction gonna take place. It is the Black woman and the Black man in union that is the closest representation of God.
The union.
That's right. That's why family is the foundation of civilization. And that's what our ancestors are trying to tell us.
Got it.
Asar, Aset, and Haru.
Right.
Haru being the result of the mating of Asar and Aset. That is the foundation of civilization. Not the baby, but the Christians, the European, got confused and thought they were just talking about Haru, and so they pull out of Haru and creates Jesus. No, they were talking about the family. And when you pull out of Haru and create Jesus, what they did was destroy the woman and call her the Holy Ghost. You know, and just dealt with God Asar, who they call God, and the Son, who they call Jesus. No, the African was saying the family is the symbol of God.
Okay, the family.
You see.
I'm glad you said that.
When you make the family sacred, only then can you have creation.
Yes, sir.
When the universe manifests as a human being, it first manifests more than likely as an African woman and then as an African man. The universe decided to be that. And in being that, it represented in the micro, the macro. If you go to the Ewe people who live in Togo, Ghana, Africa, West Africa, and in Ghana, they have a word for God. It's called Sogbe Lisa. Sogbe Lisa means the totality of creation itself is the divine, not an element in creation, but the totality of creation is divine. And in Ghana, among the Akan, they say, Nane Nyami, Jin Nyami, none but God exists. So what is the rest of us? If this thing is omnipotent, omnipotent, and supreme, then nothing else can occupy this space but it. It is everything. So the rest of us is an aspect of that thing. And when you're an aspect of the thing, you contain all the possibility of the thing. And see, that's what religion comes in, to teach you those possibilities, how to develop your character, and then develop your family, and then develop your community, and develop your nation on these principled lines.
Professor Smalls, with that being said, do you have a problem with people saying throughout the years that the white man is the devil, being that God is omnipresent and God is all encompassing? Is there a problem saying the white man is devil, he's wicked? Because that's God as well. God is everything. So do you see anything wrong with that statement?
An aspect of God. The white man is an aspect of God. The white man is a mutation off of the African gene pool. And when you have, and he's the extreme mutant. Okay. And that's part of the problem he had with us. If you knew you were supposed to be black to be perfect and you white, wouldn't you be pissed off? Because they pissed off about something. Because we didn't do nothing to them. We invited them into love. We invited them into resources. And yet they want to kill us on every turn, beat us down. What is going on? You have a mutant out of nature, and things mutate in nature every day. Okay? And so the white man is the extreme mutation of the African original human species.
Mm.
And that extreme mutation seemingly no longer have the capacity to contain what we call spirit. So that's why he has religion. See, religion is a set of rules and regulation that you can imitate and mimic, but doesn't have the capacity to transform.
Mm. Mm.
History shows us that it does not have the capacity to transform. Because what community have more sacred basilicas and temples and churches than Europe? Some of the most magnificent architecture in the world. They've stolen the wealth of all of the world, and yet they still behave as the barbarian that just came out of the cave. So it means though they have access to the body of information, they do not have the psycho-spiritual capacity to absorb that information so that it transforms them into a higher being. But the Africans do. And that's reflected in our music and our dance. We think music and dance is something separate from your spiritual being. No. It simply shows that you are in harmony and you are in rhythm with the vibrations of nature. You do not see the European moving even on a dance floor like he's in harmony with the rhythm of nature, because he's not. But he can pretend to be, like he does with a dance. Me and you hear the music, we just start moving. There's no pre-rehearsal. But he's got to set up, okay, 1, 2, 3, guide, 1, 2, 3, turn, 1, 2, back, 1, 2, forward, to simulate that he's in rhythm with nature. And it has worked very well. And he's taken his mathematical simulation of rhythm and call it classical music, and then tell you that that's the optimal music.
Wasn't that black people, the Moors, weren't they? Didn't they create classical music, James Moore?
No, don't get caught up in the black people, the Moors thing.
Oh, you don't mess with the Moors. You don't mess with the Moors?
They ain't no Moors to mess with. They're just black people. Oh. Some people call them Moors at some point in history at a certain part of the world. Some people call them 10,000 other things. Which one are we going to accept? The only reason we play with the Moorish thing is because that was something that was acceptable to white people. The same reason we go to Hebrew Israelite and Christianity and Islam, because that's acceptable to white people. So we don't go to voodoo, which is the mother of all of that. You know, we don't go to what we call the Yoruba, which is the mother of all of that, or Dogon, which is the mother of all of that, or Kemet, which is the mother of all of that. We take the bastard children that the European have allowed to manifest, and we latch on to that because it's acceptable to massa. So, no disrespect. You can only work with the body of knowledge you have available. You know, it's like if somebody, brothers and sisters, well, I'm a Hebrew Israelite and all black people are Hebrew Israelite, then who them folks you was fighting in Egypt? What were they? If you say I'm the Moors and I'm in North Africa and I'm going into Spain, who's all those millions of people that live down below the desert? They didn't know nothing about no Moors. So what we've got to do is like stop trying to be anything except what we are. Either we are God having a human experience, or we're the opposite, which we refer to as the devil. Everything in nature has a polar opposite. Everything. You know, in ancient Kemet, they show it as Haru and Set, you know, or Asar and Set. I mean, but then Asar wasn't a real person. Set wasn't a real person. Aset wasn't a real person. Haru wasn't a real person. Those are symbols of what any person should be under certain sets of circumstances. You know? And so what we are trying to do is, in what our ancestors did, they didn't try. They spent tens of thousands of years studying the movement of the stars, the movement of the constellation, the movement of the planets, the movement of the sun, and saying, okay, when it's here, what's happening on Earth? When it's here, what's happening to my body? When it's here, what's happening to the plant? When it's here, what's happening to the water? And that body of knowledge became their sacred science, which we call voodoo sometimes, Yoruba sometimes, Dogon sometimes, Congo sometimes. And it is from that body of sacred scientific knowledge that the European borrowed the fragments that he created his religions with. They look real, but it ain't Memorex. You know?
I want to take a time out just to thank everybody for being in the chat room, for tuning in to the elder, Professor James Small. I'm grateful to have this brother on the platform. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for everybody for supporting on Cash App. Rollo, thank you for Rollo just hit me up. Thanks for supporting anybody in the super chat. With Professor James Small, we're going to be on here for about 20-25 more minutes, family. With that being said, is there anything you want before we continue, Professor Small? Is there anything you want to promote before we continue? Because some people don't make it to the end of the program. Anything you got going on you want to promote? Let the people know about?
Yeah, well, I just wanted people to know, like, I'm working, for the last 4 years now, really, but in the last 2 years, particularly on this project called Godfather of Harlem. I'm the consultant on that project, so a lot of what you see in there is my mind. And we'll be debuting again with another 10 episodes on the Epic channel, which starts on the 18th of April. And there was another piece that I worked with some brothers and sisters to do a few months ago called By Whatever Means Necessary. Myself, Forrest Whitaker, Gladys Knight, Martha from Martha and the Vandellas. I think Reverend Sharpton is in there, Brother Herb Boyd, another Latino brother, and a couple of others. We just found out tonight that we won the NAACP Image Award for the best documentary. And the documentary focused on the culture and the music of Harlem and the life of Adam Clayton Powell. So those two things, if you get a chance to just check them out on the EPIX channel, of course they charge, but we've been trying to put out some heavy stuff, and it's a war because you're in the Europeans industry fighting him to make a black statement.
Right.
One of my greatest supporters has been Brother Forrest Whitaker, who's just such a beautiful support, and a writer, an Italian brother named Chris Brancato, who's an extraordinary writer, who has given me the opportunity and access to put the minds of Black people into a lot of the Black images. The other thing that I'll be doing, of course, I go to Africa every summer. And so you can go to my page, ProfessorSmallAfricanWorld.com, and you can find any information there, ProfessorSmallAfricanWorld.com. Other than that, I just want to continue telling people about spirituality is your reality. So don't get caught up in the spookality and call it spirituality. Spirituality is not a religion. It is you being conscious and aware of your reality and fully engaged in it. Okay. So when we think of the Black community, don't think of that as something there. Think of that as an extension of yourself. When you think of God, God can't exist without you. You're a part of God. Okay. Without you, you can't have no God. We're a part of what we call God. And I'll show you how to see this in the real. We have ancestors, right? Well, we are our ancestors. Now, that's another cliche I started. Everybody's jumping on it, but don't understand how it is. When my mom and dad gave birth to me, they gave birth to themselves. What else could they give birth to? I'm the best of their genes, the latest version, and the highest tech model. Then I will now take that and expand on it with my experience and grow them even greater. My mom and my dad was the best of the genes and the latest version and the highest tech model of my four grandparents. And so when my four grandparents gave birth to the two of them, they were giving birth to themselves. Now walk that ladder backwards, and where do you end up? To the created divine itself when it first manifests as a human being. So God is our greatest ancestor.
You know what? You know what?
Anybody to dispute that. You can't. It's too scientific. It's too real.
I agree with you 100%, and I've heard that for a while now, but I didn't fully understand it, Professor, until I had the personal experience of having a son. Now my son is 2 years old, and one
Yes.
of the first thoughts that I had when my son was born, and what was going through my mind, I said, reincarnation is real. Just looking at him, I said,
Absolutely.
reincarnation is real. Like, I don't have to wait till I die to be reincarnated. I'm already reincarnated.
Right.
Like, I'm good. I'm good right now. Like,
So when you die, you're continuing. He is your continuum. That's you.
Yeah.
That's you going forward. And that's why your job today is to create the most optimal world for him.
Right.
Making sure the information, the wisdom of your ancestors is passed on to him through you. And what the white man has done is disrupt that flow. He's cut us off from our culture, cut us off from our language, cut us off from our history, cut us off from the memory of our ancestors. And so it is that body of knowledge that he has captured, and he calls his state ideology, his religion. That's your stuff, painted in white face.
So, Professor, so I've heard people say before that, you know, just like you say, we mapped the stars for thousands of years. If we was able to map the stars, Professor, and all this fancy technological spiritual stuff, we had to know we was going to fall.
We did.
So,
and I think that's
hold on, Professor. Let me just say this one thing, Professor. So some of the elders that I studied said that because we knew we was going to fall, we purposely gave the knowledge to what we call the white man so he could preserve it. Even if it's in the most messed up, ratchet, diabolical way, he would still preserve it to a certain extent where when we are waking up, what we are doing now, we could tap into something and through whatever we could get the rest of it. So did we purposely give the knowledge to what we call the European so he could somewhat preserve it for us for when we wake up?
I don't agree with that one bit. Okay.
I mean, that makes sense though, Professor.
Yeah.
If I'm going to fall, I ain't got nobody else to give it to.
No. What we did when we found ourselves encountering something that we thought was human, but we realized was not human in its behavior, we then tried to put together a system of transformation, which he now calls his religion, to tame the beasts. And of course, that system is our scientific knowledge, our mathematics, our writing, our medicine, because we thought that would raise the beast to a human level. He appears to be at a human level, but he doesn't behave as though he's at a human level, even though he's had the body of knowledge for a few thousand years now. It has not transformed him, you know. And so the knowledge is preserved all over Africa. If you go to Haiti, even though they've beaten up on us physically, see, because the African notion of life value versus the Eurasian notion of life value is completely different. We didn't kill people except out of absolute necessity of self-defense. All right. When we won a war, we didn't slaughter our prisoner. We captured them. And they had to work a servitude time, but they could become the king of our kingdom, marry our daughter. They kept their human beingness. That's not slavery. Of course, white folks are trying to say that, and Negroes, you know. If you go to Haiti right now, you ever seen the drawings they do? They call bebes.
Bebes, yeah. I was looking at some before the show. The Ogun, Papa
what
Legba.
A bebe is an ancestral mental construction of an energy configuration from the cosmos. Okay,
that sound good, man. Ooh.
The bebe is like, okay, how do I create a symbol that represents an energy formulation that I have discovered or have access to in cosmology and ecology. So that I can then have a teaching tool to teach Rich about a body of energy that he can tap into that would allow him to have a more healthy body, or that he can tap into and see back into the past, or that he can tap into and push his enemy away. You see? So that's a scientific school of thought, but when they cut you off from access to that information, and then they vilify your school of thought and say it's evil. So we don't even know, we say voodoo, we don't even know where the word comes from. We don't know what the word truly means. And it comes from two African languages, the Ewe and the Fan. They live close by each other. One lived basically in Benin, the other lives in Togo. And the word means the essence of the divine creation in man or in nature. To say the essence of divine creation in man, you say voodoo gadzi. You say the essence of the divine creation in nature, you say voodoo daha. Okay? And so we're talking about our understanding of the laws of nature. That's why every African system, you look at the Orishas, they got an Orisha for communicable disease. That's a scientific school of thought. Their body of medical knowledge that they're talking about. They got an Orisha who's a herbalist. They got an Orisha who represents leadership. They've got an Orisha who represents creation. You know, like if the Yoruba say, Oludumare, the god, sent the Batala down here to form the human being. Well, then, if we take that metaphor and assign it, then a Batala has to be the womb of a woman. Okay? So we need to study our history, study our culture, study our language, so we can reconstruct. Because we're using a lot of the sacred science now. Let me tell you the biggest use of the sacred science in the last 40 years was hip hop and rap. Okay. Hip hop and rap was one of the most powerful spiritual weapons the gods ever gave to us in modern times.
How?
You got to look at the condition. They just murdered Malcolm X, murdered Medgar Evers, murdered Dr. King, destroyed the Black Panther Party, backed up the Nation of Islam. We were left totally friggin' vulnerable. They'd crushed Snake and Core. They'd taken black music off of the marketplace. We were into Holland Oates and crossover in the early 70s, late 60s, right? If black people weren't willing to sing white music, you couldn't get a job.
Damn.
All right. They took music out of all the black schools across the country like that. They destroyed our drum and bugle corps, which was all over the place like that. And the forces of nature gave us our palate, our tongue, and an idea in our mind. And we created a music form that's still dominating the entire friggin' planet. And what does the music form do? The music form gives vision and life and words and explanation to your social condition. So rap is social commentary at the highest revolutionary level. And hip hop, the culture they created to surround that in terms of how they explain themselves, display themselves, and disconnect from the greater society, was a revolutionary act in an organized fashion that even the doers didn't know what they were doing and didn't realize it came from their ancestors and their God. Here they got all the instruments in the world. They take it all from you, and you take your voice and create a music genre that dominates the world.
Woo! You make that sound powerful, brother. Oh,
it is powerful, and it saved our behinds. Hip hop saved us from the latest form of genocide. So they came at us with crack to try and destroy the movement that was saving us from their destruction. But we beat the crap. Here we are. We beat crack. Yeah, we lost a lot of people and we had a lot of damage. Then the prison industrial complex. But guess what? We're beating that shit too. Our youth today is the best of our ancestors' genes, the latest version and the highest tech model, and the whole world know it. Mm. We have to know it. Mm. We've got to understand the power that we are. We are a force of nature, each of us, because we are nature. You know, if when I get hungry, I'm not going to go kill a human being and chop him up and eat him. What do I eat? The rest of nature. So aren't I nature? I can eat the berries. I can eat the leaves. I can eat the fish. I drink the water. I breathe the air. I am nature in the form of this human being. And so what our ancestors said then, let's study how nature works so we can create the character, concepts, ideas, and principle to govern the body that is made up of everything else in nature. That's spirituality, my brother, at its highest level.
Professor Small, is it dangerous to wake somebody up after they're a certain age? Now I've heard, after somebody turned 50, 45, 50, let's just say 40, and they're hardcore Christian, should you let them be a Christian and let them stay with their Jesus? Because if you attempt to wake them up, it could be dangerous for them?
No. I have brothers call me who are in their 80s and their 70s thanking me, Brother Rich, because they heard a tape. And they said, crying sometimes saying, why didn't I notice earlier? And I said, whenever your eyes open, that's when your vision is made clear. And let's put Christianity among Black people in its different context. I don't want to harm my people with an attack on Christianity. What we call Christianity is quite different from what white people call Christianity. All right? Because most Black people in America didn't become a part of the Christian movement until after slavery, 1865. And they did that because white America didn't give us any other choice. We couldn't build any other kind of institutions where we could gather, except in the church. We couldn't build any other institution where we can gather and school our children, except in the church. And so that was the only access, the two access he gave us to celebrate ourselves: music and our church. And they fuse. And so the Black church, for most of its existence, was a revolutionary instrument and a savior of Black people. But what has happened in the last 30, 40 years is that white folks have been very clear by creating a leadership for the Black church, which is trained in his seminaries with their little doctorate degrees and their little LGBT tags and other things, to take over our church. Whereas the churches before 1965, primarily, the leadership grew up out of the church. There was some brother or sister in the community who had exemplified himself, and the people chose them to be their pastor. Now we hired somebody with a PhD from some other state or some other place, don't even know our community, to come in and put on a show, dancing and singing and lecturing and dressing fancy, and while our people die and go to prison and unemployed and unskilled and untooled. The Black church, working with the Freemasonic Prince Hall Lodge, created one of the most rapidly educated and wealthy Black population on the planet Earth ever in that short period of time. And both of those institutions have been crushed by the Negroes who walk with the consciousness of the European, who's a Yorugu. And sister, we need to study that word. It's a Swahili word that Sister Marimba Ani used when she wrote her book Yorugu, which means incomplete being. Incomplete being. And so we have the consciousness of the incomplete being now running many of our churches. We have the consciousness of the incomplete being now running our Masonic Lodge. That once produced the like of a Marcus Garvey, a David Walker, a Booker T. Washington, a W. Du Bois, a Richard Allen, Absalom Jones. All these guys were the part of the Prince Hall movement. These are some of the most revolutionary Black people ever walked in North America. What has happened? The enemy saw our power and they've subverted it. We need to study history to restore it.
Professor Small, now, I'm from New York, so I know about all types of Masons, but a lot people on the internet, when they hear the word Masonry, they get scared.
They be going into Zoom land.
They get scared. They think y'all are part of some grand conspiracy. Talk to me about Masons.
I'm a Prince Hall Mason.
So what do you say to people who say you're an agent because you're a Mason, or you're for the white man, or you're for this or that? Talk to me about that, man. Y'all get a bad reputation. The Masons got a bad reputation.
Was an agent. Marcus Garvey was an agent.
Elijah too, right? Elijah.
Okay. David Walker was an agent. Elijah Muhammad was an agent. Malcolm X was an agent. Martin Luther King was an agent, because all of them were Prince Hall Masons. So don't confuse what Black people do with a tool with what white people do with a tool. I know what white Masonry is. White Masonry is the Ku Klux Klan, as far as I'm concerned.
You know what it is, Professor? I think they're studying history from a 2020 perspective, from a 2019, whatever year we're in. You have to put your mind into what was going on at that time. So since they're not doing that, they're observing what's going on currently with the Masons, and they're applying that to 1920. You know what I'm saying? When it was totally different,
right,
back then.
But see, most of them don't have enough knowledge, because they don't have a knowledge of what goes on in those lines. Okay? What the white folks who have been anti-Masonry have put out here, and I've seen some of that stuff on the internet, is a joke. All right? If all of your great leaders have been a part of this instrument and have used it for revolutionary purpose, the people who founded him and was pushing the Underground Railroad were mostly Paul Masons. The people who found the AME Church and the AME Zion Church were Prince Hall Masons. The people who found the African Baptist Church in Atlanta were Prince Hall Masons. The people who formed the first Pan-African Conference were Prince Hall Masons. But if you don't know your history, you're stuck in the white man's mystery, and you can never work your black magic. And Dr. Noble gave me that concept, right? He says, history erases the mystery and allow you to work he said your magic. I said my black magic, because I love black magic.
That's my name. That's my name, Black Magic. So.
My man. There it is, Black Magic 363. So history is important. See, we poo-poo history. Like we don't have to learn it. No, you got to study history, because it'll get rid of the white man's mystery and the Negro mystery. All right? So you can have a clear thought. It'll restore your memory and allow you to create your new imagination, so you can create the African world you want to see.
Hey, Professor Small, since you into the, you know all about the Orishas, the Voudun system, all these spiritual systems. There's been a lot of elders that I've talked to who have told me, hey, black magic, be careful with that name. That's, the good magic is white magic. And I mean, people you will be surprised say this. They say that
I won't be surprised.
Don't light a black candle or anything, So what's the difference in the Voudun system between black magic and white magic, my brother?
We don't play that color black magic.
You don't. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
That's the white man false dichotomy.
Right. Okay.
Voudun is just being yourself. What did I tell you it means? It means the essence of the divine in you.
Yes.
That's what the word means. The essence of God in you. Become conscious of that. When you saw your baby that you and your lady produce, you were that aspect of God that created. That's the only way God creates. So what does that make you? A part of the divine itself, that part that creates. But the creation don't stop there with just the physical instrument you create. You create concepts, ideas, and principles that help you reconstruct society on ethical, moral premises that would allow for truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. You don't beg no white man for that. You don't wait for no white man or no Asian for that. You live that as a part of who you are, and then bond with others who live that as a part of who they are, and that's how you create a family and a community.
Mm-hmm.
Find the God in you, and you'll recognize the God in me.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Hey, somebody in the chat said, ask you about the boule. What's your thoughts on the boule?
The boule started out as a good thing, and for the most part, the boule still do a lot of good. You know, I was close with Steve, and Steve kicked the boule in the behind very hard because a lot of
Coakley. You talking about Steve Coakley?
Steve Coakley, my brother,
yes.
Steve Coakley.
Yes.
Because a lot of the boule has become corrupt bourgeois Negroes, but many of them are still people who serve the Black community. You know, Asa Hilliard was a boule. Would you say Asa was an enemy of the Black community? You know, Dr. Asa Hilliard.
Yeah.
Okay. The boule started out as some Black folks who were dentists and lawyers and doctors who felt that they were not allowed into the social environment with white dentists, lawyers, and doctors. So they created an instrument for themselves.
Mm.
But when you live in a capitalist bourgeois society, and that's the values you are absorbing, and you don't bring into your boule construct an African, philosophical construct, then what are you going to end up producing at the end of the day? A white behaving instrument. Mm-hmm. Even though their intent was to serve the Black community, but if the instrument you use was designed to exploit the Black community, at the end of the day, what are you going to end up doing? Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're dealing with. But in itself, even the sororities and the fraternities at those Black colleges were not designed to hurt Black people. It was designed to elevate Black people. But if you don't have an African foundation to it, if you don't know about the mystery system of Kemet, and you're using, the fraternal system of England, well, England was about killing us, abusing and misusing us. And so you're going to end up doing the same thing. No matter what the good intention of your heart is, the tool you have is designed to destroy me. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Man, well, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you said
my wife was saying you're supposed to be back downstairs at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. I'm so hey, how about you want to wrap it up now, my brother? You good now, or yeah, let's wrap it up now.
All right. I think we should wrap now.
Okay. Give the people a message before you leave. Let them know, whatever you want them to know, my brother.
Yeah. The key thing is know thyself. Study our history. And those Black men and women who gave their lives for us, let's learn about them and let's honor them and let's learn their history and try to mimic that, both on the continent of Africa and here. Malcolm X said, a cat may have kittens in an oven, it doesn't make them biscuits. Africans being born in America don't stop us from being Africans. All right? So if we born in Central America, we still didn't stop being African. If we born in China, we still Africans. So stop this foolishness about the separation. Yes, we have ethnic differences because the African American has produced its own ethnic nation. Mm-hmm. Just like the Yoruba is an ethnic nation, but he's still African. Mm-hmm. And the Akan and the Ashanti are ethnic nations, but they're still Africans. We are African Americans. That's an ethnic nation with a set of historical experience that we have in common and nobody else have. Okay? But it doesn't stop us from being our parents. We are still they, with the same obligation to ancestry and parents that everybody have. It's like knowing that when my mom and dad gave birth to me, they gave birth to themselves. And I'm their representative. And those 8 children I've got, they're my representative going into the future. When I'm gone, I'm still here. I didn't go anywhere. I've recycled back into nature. And the 92 minerals or elements that make up my body, or minerals that make up my body, I think it's elements that make up my body, they go back to the earth. That's why I don't want to be buried in no caskets. The white boy got slick. He locked us into the cement shit and the steel stuff. We can't go back to the earth. No, burn my behind up and scatter me in a field somewhere. I want to go back to nature. You know, the smoke that go out of the chimney that makes up the 80 or 77% water that makes up my body goes back to nature. I've already recreated myself. I already live for eternity. This me you're talking to, I've been here since Binya Binyanda, meaning that's what the old folks used to say down south. When he says, oh boy, I've been here since Binya Binyanda, that means I've always been. I have the cells in my body that was in the body of the first woman and the man that the universe created when it first manifests as a human being. I still have, you still have their cells in our body. Let's construct that bridge back to our past via our history. And we won't worry about the white man think, do, or say. We will learn how to construct for ourselves the spiritual mind that would allow us to provide the food, clothing, shelter. And listen to this. If you separate your spirituality from providing food, clothing, and shelter, you're a fool. You're dead and you're lost. Your spirituality should be tied to the economic, politics, and culture which you control in the community you live in. Your spirituality should be tied to controlling land, labor, and resources where you live. If you separate your spirituality from that, then you're living in a what I call spookality instead of reality. So your spirituality is your being in full comprehension and consciousness of your daily, hourly, minute, second reality. And that is undergirded by the history, which gives us our ancestors the knowledge of ecology and cosmology and how it works to give us the tools to build an optimal life. And when you get that straight, by studying your history and erasing the white man's mystery and seeing how to work your black magic, because the only magic is black magic.
Hey, and with that being said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. A magnificent live, great live. Professor, I got to get you back on here soon.
Yes, sir.
I know I've been BSing. I've been BSing, but I got to get you on here more often, my brother. I definitely appreciate the talk, and I appreciate you for coming on here. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. We got about 1,000 people in the chat room right now. Thanks for tuning in, being with us.
Let me recommend one book to them, though.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Yeah, and it's this book by Wade Nobles.
It's upside down. Turn it the other way.
Oh, upside down. Yeah.
Yeah.
You see the Veves, he explains them in the book.
The Island of Memes.
The Island of Meme. The Island of Meme. Haiti's Unfinished Revolution. And it's by Dr. Wade Nobles. And what the book is about, it used the Haitian Revolution as a model for how the black mind should work. The brother's a psychiatrist and he's a traditional priestess. He's the baddest black mind walking the earth right now. The Island of Meme. Y'all got to get this book, my brothers and sisters, my children, my nieces, my nephews, my sons, and my daughters. It's a little difficult to read, but you'll get it because your intent is there. And these Veves that's on here, he'll break that down for you. He'll break down voodoo. And what he said, our problem is that we are infected with European culture. We got to get rid of the European cultural infection of our minds and replace it with an African healing balm of culture, value, interests, and principles. So get this book. It'll tighten you up.
I'm order that tonight. So I appreciate you for sharing that with us. Definitely appreciate you for sharing that with us. Family, this is Brother Rich. We getting out of here. I'm gonna see you next time, family. Candy Acid Rain, thank you for the super chat donation. I appreciate all the love. Peace, family.
Peace and blessings.